do I have to write about all the diasporas as well, like Chinese diaspora, Armenian diaspora, and what were their struggle, or I write simply an essay?
I think it depends on the question, okay? You are responding to the question. You are not responding to a particular thing. So if the question is very generic in nature, very general type, okay, then probably you have to answer. You can pick and choose a number of diaspora and put it in a comparative perspective. If it is pointed toward a particular diaspora, then I think you have to be very specific, you have to be very particular. So please read the question. I always ask my students, please read the question at least twice, okay? Don't rush, okay?
Okay,
Take a
sir.
pause.
It's generic question. It's not on any specific diaspora.
Okay, then make it very general, okay? Then pick and choose, okay? Go with the flow, okay? And then just make a general statement, okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Most welcome.
Sir, you can start now.
All right, sure. Thank you very much, Dr. Sadanand, okay? Thanks for giving me this opportunity. This is the course called MPSC 5. The title of the course is State and Society in Africa. This is part of the Master of Arts in Migration and Diaspora Studies. Offered by aNew, Indira Gandhi National Open Universities. We have already covered 3 classes on 5th January, 12th January, and 19th January. Last Sunday, we did not have any classes because of the Republic Day holiday. Today is the 2nd of February. Today, we are going to take care of 3 chapters combined and cumulative together: human security, deterritorialization, and violence and its manifestation. In the last class, we discussed, and again, I'll give you a very brief overview and summary. Then we can take the things forward for today's class. So that will lead down to that. Africa and the world economy, how Africa has been doing in the pre-colonial days, post-colonial days, colonial days, and post-colonial days. Mostly, I think, 1950s onwards, and then during Cold War years and in the post-Cold War years, 1945 to 1990. And then the contemporary phase. Remember, in one of my earlier classes, I told you about this power equation at a global level, at a systemic level: unipolar world, bipolar world, then again back to unipolar. America is number 1 in post 1990, in the post Cold War phase. Then early part of 20th century, we have got a multipolar world, multiple poles of power, multiple centers of power: US, China, Japan, even India, Russia, France, Great Britain, many countries, okay? Then I think in the 2010, 2020, it's a multiplex world. The Western power hegemony is there, dominance is there, but there is an emergence of global South. Countries like Nigeria, countries like Egypt, countries like Latin American countries, Argentina, Brazil, etc. They are also raising their profiles, okay? And in today's world, as one of the scholars said, an American scholar called Joseph Joffe, that this is a kind of 2.5 world, in the sense it is US, China, China, US, with half power is like Russia, okay? Piggybacking behind China, okay? So let us see in the next 4 years during Trump 2 administration, how the world is going to shape up, okay, or reshaped. So in the last class also, we discussed about the Cold War, non-alignments. I discussed in the morning in my other class, India and the world, how non-alignment, the policy on racism, racial segregation, racial discrimination, issues on isolationism, issues on ideological variations, alliance systems, how non-alignment tried to cut through that one and create a new kind of grouping, okay, among the like-minded parties, whether it is Nehru of India, Sukarno of Indonesia, Nkrumah of Ghana, Julius Nyerere of Kenya, Tanzania, Jimmy Kenyatta of Kenya, Gamal Abdel Nasser from Egypt, and many other leaders, okay, and Joseph Tito from Yugoslavia, then Yugoslavia. So a number of these high-profile leaders in the late 40s, early 40s, they combined and they formed this non-alignment. And one of their main agenda of the non-alignment movement was decolonization of Africa and putting African solidarity at the forefront. Okay, so that was very, very important. Also, the UN peacekeeping operations, particularly in Africa, in Namibia, in Angola, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, many other countries, the peacekeeping operation has been going on, how India has been at the forefront in the peacekeeping operations, not only peacekeeping, but also peace building and peacemaking. So peace is not something just you do it and just go away. It has to be nourished, it has to be sustained. That's why when the even Millennium Development Goals set of goals came along, and even sustainable goals, this was also put forward that you cannot just back it halfway. You have to take it all the way forward. In the post-Cold War Africa, we saw how the African continent is trying to come to places, how they are slowly and surely they're trying to build on the governance architecture, trying to develop a kind of model African society, African state, in spite of all the hindrances, in spite of all the obstacles that they have. I've also told in the first or two classes how in the era of globalization, liberalization, privatization, okay, how Africa has been trying to navigate between globalization on the one hand and localization, okay, how they are trying to connect global with the national, with the local, okay, how they are trying to develop a kind of symmetry with these three things, okay. Again, within the boundary of regional architectures like African Union and many other regional international bodies, how they're trying to stay within the matrix of interconnected societies, interbedded societies, but at the same time create their own identities, their own distinctiveness, their own uniqueness. There has been challenges, there has been problems, but still, nevertheless, they have been trying. How Africa is trying to emerge out of the shadow in the new emerging world order, in the new world order, in the new global order, or you can say the reverse way, in the global disorder. Okay? How Africa has been coming out of the shadow from the dark continent that has been portrayed for a long, long time, based on its history, its culture, its socio-political institutions, etc. We also discussed a lot in the first 2 or 3 classes about the slave trade, how that harmed the African societies, okay, when they were exported just like animals to different places in Europe, in North America, particularly in southern part of United States, okay, and how that continued for centuries till people like Abraham Lincoln, they abolished slavery as a form of institutions, as a form of servitude, and one by one, different countries in the world, they got rid of these evil systems. We also discussed about scramble for Africa because the raw materials were just awesome. It was an attractive proposition for the European powers. That's why you saw the competing colonial powers, whether it is Great Britain, whether it is France or Portuguese or the Belgians, everybody was trying to scramble and put their hand on the big apple pie, and the big apple pie was African continent. Okay, so that was the scramble for Africa. But as far as Africa is concerned, if you look inwards, it fragmented, it decimated the African societies. Okay, because the colonial powers, usually even in India also, when they were colonizing us in 19th and 20th century, early part of 20th century, they basically ruled in a policy, as you all know, through a policy of divide and rule. Okay, so they divided among ethnic lines, religious lines, tribal lines. Okay, princely states versus non-princely states, zamindar versus that kind of thing. Okay, that happened in here. Okay, that also happened in South Africa. I was reading the other day a book. Okay, so some of the white people, the elitist people, the power elite, the local elites. Elite means what? That means the select few. Okay, so they got hold of them. They provided them some patronage, some positions, some titles like that. Okay, and they were used as a pawn, as a bargaining chip. Okay, to use against their own people in different ways, in different capacities. The colonial onslaught also displayed rich physical resources, destroyed societal and cultural fabric of the African people. It took a long time for Africa to regain their tradition, their heritage, their distinctiveness, because some people were coaxed into it. The transplantation of European ideas and institutions, in some way, it was a plus. It was a positive thing because the people got education. Like, for example, if you look at India, for example, if you ask me, I mean, okay, the British, if you put it on a piece of paper, what are the positive things they did during their colonial rule in India, the British Raj, okay? And what are the negative things? On the negative things, divide and rule, exploiting this and that, okay? Taking away resources, the money, the revenue, blah, 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 okay? But on the positive side, look at the education, look at the introduction of English language, look at the revenue system. Even today also, lot of the terms that you find in the legal systems, in the revenue systems, that is still being heavily borrowed by the British. The judicial system, it's still there. So you cannot just wishy-washy, you cannot just say everything was bad, sad, and mad. You cannot do like that. You cannot make a sweeping generalizations of something bad. Certain good things did happen. Okay, people did get some opportunities for upward mobility, for upward movement, for educational advancement, getting a knowledge that my own father, he was a medical doctor, and he did that during the 1940s when the British was there. And that time, I'm from the state of Odisha. That was Odisha, Bihar, and Bengal. They're one particular state. And he also was became a doctor. He served for a couple of years in Bengal. Then he served for the rest of his life in Odisha. My grandfather, my father's father, he served for a couple of years in a jail, fighting as a freedom fighter um, against the British colonial rule. That was in the 30s and 1940s. So many people did that in many different ways, in many different levels. Strength of ideas, we discussed Africa's intellectual deficit, Africa net importer of manufactured goods, food, and ideas, the impact of external influences, some positive and some negative, as I just said. But in the process of doing that, certain times we see in certain places in Africa, which is definitely not homogeneous, a very heterogeneous entity, that we see rampant poverty, social conflict, criminalization of state, organized genocides, etc. Okay, this was not happening across the board in one particular uniform direction, but it did happen. Some places more, some places less, but nevertheless it did happen. Acute food insecurity, severe famine and drought, heavy dependence on food aid. Okay, but again, when I say heavy dependence on food aid, this is a double-edged sword. Okay, it is good to get a food aid, but the problem starts when you are being too dependent on the aid. Okay, because you develop a kind of parasitic dependence. Okay, you forget to develop to stand on your own leg. Like in the 1950s and 60s in India, when India became independent, the first decade or first 2 decades, we did not have enough food productions in India. At the time of independence, our population was something like 330 million people. Okay. Today, I think the population is 4 times more than that. But today, I think we have got enough food. That's why, the people who are below the poverty line, BPL people, they get 5 kg ration, they get free this, free that, okay? But in the 50s and 60s, even though the population was much less, maybe 1/4 of what it is today, uh, it was we did not have enough food grains. Okay, thanks to the Green Revolution that was launched in the early 1970s by an American Nobel Prize winner called Norman Borlaug. Okay, like in 1 acre of, let us say, of paddy field or a rice field. Okay, you grow 4 times more, 3 times more using new techniques, new technologies, new methods. Okay, so that ushered in a golden age of green revolution. And in the dairy industries also, you have got the white revolution. And also we took very good advantage of all the resources we got in the ocean, because India is very privileged and lucky to have a long ocean line, sea lines, both on the east as well as in the west. Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea, the Indian Ocean, etc., etc. So today in India, we are at a vantage point because of the success of the Green Revolution, White Revolution, and Blue Revolution. Okay, but in Africa, things have happened. And again, in Africa also, if you look the eastern part, like Djibouti, like Somalia, like Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, I think they have progressed a little bit more. Okay, and in the Central and South Africa part, particularly South Africa in particular, the per capita is pretty high. But in the northern part, and particularly in the western sides, Mali and Congo and many other places, okay, there is a big disparity. It's like in our country, certain places like Jharkhand, Bihar, and places like in the northeast, some people call it quote unquote Bimaru state, okay? But some places like Gujarat and Maharashtra, they have advanced quite a bit, okay? So there is this mismatch between within the inter-regions and intra-regions as well. Environmental deteriorations, wasteful use of natural and human resources, lack of sustainable development. Okay, so development needs to be sustained. It's not like a one-day wonder. It needs to be sustained. That's why the word sustainable is very, very important. Like in the exam, okay, today you are getting 90 out of 100, okay, which is pretty good. But you need to sustain that, okay? You are working hard. You are trying to make a mark. You are trying to make a reputation or enhance your credibilities, okay? Or enhance your legitimacy. But that needs to be sustained over a period of time. It's not like Aladdin's lamp or some magic sticks here and there, okay? It needs to be sustained. So sustainable development is also very crucial and very germane. Inadequate health and education facilities. Of course, the good thing is today, I think Africa is reaching out to other countries. For example, I have told you in the last class and before also how different patients, sometimes you go to some hospitals, you get patients from different parts of Africa. They come here because they get good quality medical treatments at a very affordable prices. And the quality of India's medical doctors, professionals, paramedical staffs, they are second to none, and they take very, very good cares. Okay, and educational system also, in the university I was teaching in Delhi, and in any universities in Delhi and many places around India, we have got students coming from different parts of Africa. They take advantage, like students taking classes in aNew, even for this particular course. Why they are doing so? They are not doing out of favor, because they know they, with a paying just a minimal sum, they can get the best education that this country can offer. And aNew is one of the finest and the best universities in terms of giving open learning, in terms of giving distance education, in terms of developing your broad intellectual spectrum in a very holistic manner. So it enhances and it enriches their understanding. It's definitely they move up in the ladder in terms of the building blocks. So yes, education things, and we have also, I think India, in particular in contemporary times, in today's times, India, as you know, has developed this NEP, New Education Policy 2020. As part of that, one of the thrust area has been to internationalize the Indian education system abroad. Okay, so we are inviting the top universities in different parts of the world, including in Africa, to come to India, send more students, more research scholars, more teachers, and maybe open up campuses here, okay, satellite campuses, okay, and same thing, vice versa. Indian campus, I think India is currently trying to open up campuses in Zanzibar. India has been trying to open campuses in different parts in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Uganda, in South Africa. So I think in the next 3 to 5 years, you will see a number of top Indian universities, but whether it is IITs or NITs or Delhi University, JNU, etc., they will be opening up important campuses. So they can, students over there, they can get the same education that our people are getting over here, okay, by paying a very minimal sum, but getting the best out of it, getting a very, very good quality educations. The weak link between the post-colonial state and society, I think that bridge needs to be, that divide needs to be bridged, okay? Because unless if the gap is wide, it is very difficult to bridge that gap, okay? So it is very important for the regimes or for the government, wherever it is, okay? Whether it is in Liberia or Mali or any places, in Africa, whether it is Eastern Africa, Western Africa, Southern Africa. I think different countries, they are doing it in different ways. A couple of years ago, I was privileged to be in Egypt. In Egypt, I think I did visit some of the universities in Cairo, in Alexandria, I was very delighted to see that students are really working hard. They are really making a difference in spite of adversity, in spite of coming from a very lower rung of the socioeconomic backgrounds. People are working hard. They're trying to make a sense of it. Some of the countries are, even in Government of India has donated some books. And so they're very much well aware of that, what is going on around the world. They would like to know more. So they have a thirst for knowledge, etc., etc. Today's class, I think, on human security. Human security is, how human security can be. First of all, how can we define human security? What is human security? And how we can ensure human dignity, because dignity is also associated with the security kind of things. Okay. So when you say human security, we saw in if you follow the United Nations formula, in the 60s and 70s, the basic human needs of the people like scholars like Mahbubul Haq, Paul Stratton, they talk about how they can develop a framework, a contextual things about human security and how they can take it forward. In the 1990s, in the post-Cold War era, and at the beginning of the globalization process, the idea was human security can best be served through a safe, secured, and a clean environment kind of things. And since then, I think there has been a conscious effort by different governments to make it much more ecologically balanced, make it much more enriched, so that people can get assured employment, there can be income security, there can be less insecurity, and the bridge between the rich and the poor, the rich country, poor country, rich region, poor region, that can be reduced to the absolute minimum. Okay. In terms of the characteristics, features of human security, it is basically, it should be people-centric, because it is meant for the people, by the people, of the people. Okay, just I'm kind of parodying Abraham Lincoln, who said in that context of democracy is for the people, by the people, for the with the people. Okay, so this should be people-centric. Okay, because it is meant for the people, and it has to be universal. It cannot be parochial. It cannot be just segmented. It cannot, you cannot say that human security is important in country A, but it is not important for country B or country C or country D. It is important in Egypt. It is important in Libya. It is important in Mauritania. It is important in Congo, Liberia, Sierra Leone. You pick and choose any other countries in any part of Africa. Okay, so it has to be universal. It has to be things in the context of the entire Africa as a continent in a universal way. Next, human security has to be seen in the context of being interdependent. You cannot divorce the socioeconomic, the cultural dimensions, the determinants from that, because everything is connected, everything is interconnected, everything is interdependent. You cannot, it's like saying you cannot stand by pulling somebody's leg. Okay, you can only stand with your own leg. Okay, that means you need self-empowerment, you need to self-growth in that particular context. Also, you have to see the progress or the development of human security in both qualitative as well as quantitative terms. Just quantity statistics does not go too far. It can only provide a snapshot. But qualitative difference, qualitative improvement, qualitative positive, proactive improvement, that is what is more important, instead of just going for statistics and data, etc., etc. The areas of the threats to human security, what are the threats to human security? The threats are at multiple levels, at a multi-level dimensions. For example, the health security, the health issues. Let us start with pandemics, okay? In the last 100, 200 years since the Spanish flu, we have seen pandemics like Ebola, H1N1, swine flu, chikungunya. Very recently, we saw COVID-19, okay? And there are even a lot of new viruses are coming along at different places, okay? So this health security is very, very important. I remember 50 years ago, 70 years ago, there was no treatment plan for polio. Okay, but today India is polio free. Many parts of Africa is polio free. So thanks to even some foundations like Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation and many other agencies, even the government, UNDP, United Nations Development Program, etc. I think they are taking very proactive measures. Okay, many years ago, decades ago, malaria was a big problem, big anathema. Smallpox was a big thing. People used to die out of smallpox. They used to die out of malaria. But today we have medicines, and every single year, every single decade, we have got new and new medicines for all kinds of life-threatening diseases, from obesity to cardiac to AIDS to Alzheimer disease. To all many things. Okay, so things are improving. So health security is very important, and I think every human being, they deserve uh, to get the health issue to be resolved to the best way possible. So I think different countries in the world, they're trying to help out, but I think they need to do more about it. Okay, it's not like a charity that you are doing to a particular country or to a particular population. You are doing it for the humanity. You are doing it for the upliftment for generations to come. If there is a new medicine, new vaccine that is being developed, okay, like for example, today if a child is born, he or she, we take that baby to the doctors for different kind of immunizations. They give you a chart. Okay, every 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, we give a shot. We give uh, hepatitis B, we give polio vaccination, on many other things. Okay, so I think health security is very important in that particular aspect. um, Food security, food is of course very important. um, that either you provide or you develop the technologies of food. As I just gave you the example of the green revolution, you try to develop the technologies, use the kind of right seeds. I'll tell you one personal example. When I was in Japan in 98 to 2005, in fact, end of 2005, I spent exactly 8 years in Japan as a visiting professor. Japan is a very small country. Okay, the reason I'm saying is because it is connected to this food security thing. Japan is a very small country. It is the size of kind of Uttarakhand, maybe half of UP, Uttar Pradesh. Okay, it is much smaller than my own state of Odisha. But look at Japan. Okay, in terms of developments, in terms of economy, in terms of everything. Okay, and one of the things I noticed even in my very first week or first month of my stay in Japan was the space is very crunched. Japan is a population of 127, 130 million people. It's a lot of people. It's a very small place, okay? And it's an island. It is all surrounded by water, Sea of Japan, Pacific Ocean, etc. And every now and then they have an earthquake, they have a volcano, they have got all kinds of natural calamities, they have tsunami. Uh, so they have much less space, much less land mass in Japan. They have got only 4 islands: Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. And then upshore, just like Andaman Nicobar, they have got Okinawa. So 4+1, you can say. Very small. Okay. The entire Japan can be fitted with Uttarakhand. Okay. If I can put it that way, or with Haryana. It is that small. Okay. But even if a person has got a small place like this in front of their house or behind their house or on the left side or the right side, I've seen people, even old people, male and female, even in their 80s. I met women, an old lady, 83-year-old, 85-year-old, half bent, okay? They're still planting the rice plantation 10 o'clock in the night in a very small area and just waving at me, okay, saying they are saying something in Japanese, that's just saying hello to me or something. Because out of curiosity, I was saying, I mean, how can a 80, 85-year-old old person, old lady is planting some rice seeds, and they do that 3 or 4 times a year. And they cut. I have seen how the rice grows up and they cut because of the technologies, new crops, new things like that. So they are extremely hardworking. They use all the technologies kind of things. So this food security things, I think if we can do it in India within the 15, 20 years, okay, after independence, by 70s, we became self-sufficient. We became Atmanirbhar. We became, not only we are able to feed a lot of mouth, more than 400, 500 million people by 1970 standards, okay? And we used to have a lot of surplus food, which we used to export and get some good money, okay, good remittance by exporting it to different African countries, different, even I was in Russia for 4 or 5 months, okay, also a professor in Moscow. When I went to buy some rice, it is all written basmati rice and all different kinds of Indian rice. It is all taken from India, okay. And Russia buys a lot of rice apart from other things, spices, Indian tea, all those things, okay. It is all going from India, okay. That means India is in a position today where not only we are we can take care of all our population, okay. We do have a lot of reserve, we do have a lot of surplus, okay, to export it to other countries, okay. So thanks to the technologies, agricultural innovations, etc., etc. So food security is highly important because unless you can provide 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you can provide some, at least the basic minimum, the nutritious things. I think human security cannot be achieved. So that will be falling short of that. Economic security, that is also very important. The places, for example, I can give you many examples like the Food Security Act that was uh, promulgated a couple of years ago. Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Acts, okay. So a lot of these things that was ensured to develop kind of economic security among the people. At least you are guaranteed of some absolute minimum, okay, because it is incumbent on any government, okay, anywhere in the world to make sure that the people of that country, the citizens of that country, the people living in that country, they are assured and they are guaranteed of economic security in a dignified way, in a proper way. So that's very important. Environmental security, that's also very important. One of the issues that is being raised, I think Ansika was talking about this election thing taking place in Delhi in 3 days' time on Wednesday. One of the issues is the issue of pollution. I was in Delhi 40, 50 years ago in 1980s. I was a student in aNew, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Nobody heard this term pollution, okay? Life was so simple. We used to go to Pragati Maidan, Trade Fair, we used to go to Connaught Place, we used to go to Palika Bazaar, we used to go to um, different movies, Upahar, Kamal, Sangam. There is no issue of pollution. Everything was very normal, very cool, very casual, a kind of thing. But today, during this month of October, November, December, January, every now and then you have even odd policy. You cannot walk on the street. You have got elderly people, small babies and children. If they have got a breathing problem, they have got asthma and other kind of things. Okay, so it is almost like you are breathing poison in the air. A lot of times the schools and colleges and universities, they are getting closed. Okay, schools are being forced to do things on online, etc., etc. So environmental security is extremely important. I mean, the kind of things, I mean, why? Because everybody knows that there is going to be stubble burning in Punjab and Haryana at this time, okay? Why don't you put complete ban on the firing of crackers, okay? Why it is still available in the black markets, in some markets, etc. So I think, and also the people's consciousness. In Japan, when I was there, nobody could dare to throw any leftover garbage or plastics into the air. Everything, they have got different kinds of colors, garbage bags to put things into that. If you don't do that, you have to pay a very heavy penalty. So you cannot dare to do that. So everybody is totally conscious. It is a part of civic consciousness. Okay, I think we need to educate the people, and we need to tell them, like, if 1% does it, 10%, 100%, so that definitely creates a nightmarish situation kind of things. I think if people become much more conscious, much more educated about it, I think definitely things will go in the right directions, and definitely the issues such as pollution, etc. Same thing in Yamuna River, the pollution and many places. Okay, I'm talking in very general terms. Okay, felling of the trees. So why it is that environmental issues are a very, very big issues. Okay, and this is not only a India problem, but this is a global problem. In 1990s, when Bill Clinton was the president of the United States, who was his vice president? His name was Al Gore. He was the vice president for 8 years, 92 to 96, and second term, 96 to 2000. Then he contested for presidency against George W. Bush in 2000. He lost the election. Okay. But anyway, in the 1990s, Al Gore wrote a book called An Inconvenient Truth, basically talking about the issue, raising the consciousness about global warming, about climate change, okay, about environmental pollution, okay. Nobody paid any attention to Gore's idea that he was proposing in the early 90s because it was not very popular kind of thing. People said, oh, this guy is just trying to sell the books. He developed a documentary. Maybe he is looking after some Oscar award, etc., etc. Okay. But today, nobody is laughing about it. It is a real issue. Global warming is real. Climate change is real. Environmental pollution is real. Okay. And everybody is suffering. There is no winner in this particular game. Everybody is a loser. So it is incumbent on everybody together to make sure that we take care of these particular issues in this particular way. Political security, also we need that right to freedom to speak, freedom of expression, freedom of residence, freedom, I mean all the basic freedoms, okay, that you saw in the fundamental rights or you saw in the Bill of Rights or you see in any countries in the world, whether it is Great Britain, Australia, Canada, US, India, any place in the world, okay. So political rights that need to be ensured, okay, at least the basic minimum kind of things. And even if somebody is doing some wrong, there has to be a proper redressal process, there has to be a proper grievances process. Okay. So political security is important. Personal security, yes. I mean, if you're walking in the middle of the streets, okay, you should make sure that nobody is going to invade your privacy, okay? You are not intimidated, you are not threatened, okay? And your personal security is very much intact. Your privacy is very much intact, okay? Let us say you go to a doctor or you go to a lawyer, okay? You give some information. You make sure this information is strictly kept very personal. Nobody dares to invade your privacy. So that is a part of your personal security. Community security, that is also a part of human security. Okay, so not only you think in terms of person, like one person or two person, because we live like in a community. Okay, you cannot just say, I want this, I want to live in a royal life or in a regal splendor. Okay, you cannot think in terms of isolation. It has to be done in the context of the society in general, the community in general. Community means it has to go with the commune, in the group of people, 5, 10, 20, 30 people, like Residents Welfare Association, okay? So you have to think in that particular ways, okay? So that you don't appear to be too selfish, too self-centered, okay? And it has to be done for the community kind of things in a commune setup, okay? And human security aspects in the houses, in the streets, in the jobs, in the commodities, and in the environment. And I think all of these things are very, very important. I think Africa, in contemporary times, I think they are making some tangible movements, forward movements, positive movements, I would say, in some of these things, whether it is health security, food security, economic security, environmental security, political security, personal security, community security, and many others, okay? But I still think there is a long way to go. Some countries, they have gone a little bit ahead, but there are more countries in Africa, they need to catch up. And it's better if they catch up really, really fast, okay? The next point, I think, is the deterritorialization and the problems of social identity. First of all, we need to, understand what do you mean by deterritorialization, okay? Deterritorialization basically, I think, means I'm trying to make it as simple as possible to remove indigenous people from their homelands, okay? Deterritorialization. Territory, that means, let us say, a particular tribe or a particular tribal group or a particular Adivasi group, okay, indigenous group, okay, they live in a particular areas, okay. You cannot just uproot them, okay, and if you do that, okay, that will be called as a deterritorialization, okay. Even if you do it for the sake of developments, you need to talk to them, you need to involve in some intense consultations, negotiations, provide them adequate compensations. And then once you arrive at certain consensus, then only you can think of it. But if you do it in a very arbitrary way, in a high-handed manner, I think that is very counterproductive, and that creates a lot of social unrest, that creates a lot of social turbulence. Okay, so changing the relationship between culture and territories. Okay, because some people are very much attached with the culture part of it. Okay, culture is something very intrinsic to one group of people or to one tribes. Okay, it is very primordial. Just like a small baby is very much attached to his or her mother. Okay, so it is very intrinsic, very basic kind of things. Okay, so once you try to uproot that, once you try to take off the umbilical cord, okay, that creates a lot of turbulence, that creates a lot of ripple effect. Okay, so that is what do you mean by deterritorialization. Okay, and then if you look in terms of social identities, you can think in terms of the groups, cultures, identities, multiple identities. A lot of us, I think, we wear multiple heads of multiple identities. For example, you can be a black, you can be African, you can be a person from a third world, you can also be a Christian. Okay, you can be rich, you can be poor. So people carry multiple weights. Okay, you can speak multiple languages. Okay, multiple ethnic accents, etc. And I think that also creates a lot of social categories. Okay, and subcategories. Okay, and we see that in different parts of Africa. Okay, we also need to understand the nation state, and particularly in terms of ethnicity. Okay, and ethnicity in terms of languages, cultures, uh, like for example Swahili, that is widely used in many parts of Africa, but not everybody speaks that. There are still a lot of people who speak English, who speak Arabic, who speak people from different religious faiths. Okay, so people have got their own tribal, own indigenous kind of languages that they do speak. Okay, so we see ethnicity reflected in terms of languages, culture, subculture, primordial culture, ethnic solidarity, ethnic policies, ethnic contestations, tribal identity, religious identities. Okay, one of the in terms of um, ethnicity and nationalism. I remember once when I was in US, I took a course on ethnic politics. Okay, and there we read about a classic book by called Beyond the Melting Pot. It was written by Nathan Glaser, a very prominent sociologist, and Daniel Moynihan. So basically, there they talk about in the American context, of course, and that also applies to Europe and also in some ways can apply to Africa also. What is melting pot? And contrast to that, what is a salad bar? So in the 50s and 60s, or even the 1940s, okay, during the World War I, World War II, and immediately after World War II, in post 1945 period, there is this two competing ethnic identities that are trying to compete for jockeying for dominance. Okay, one was this Anglo conformity, conform to Anglo-Saxon traditions, West European traditions. Okay, European traditions. People coming to America, to Canada, to different parts. Okay, you look and talk just like a white person. Okay, and the pressure is on you, the peer pressure. Okay, so that is comfort. And even if you come from different parts, from Brazil or Mexico or China or Laos or Cambodia or India or Sri Lanka, you merge your identities or sub identities and merge into a khichdi kind of things into one single whole. Okay, which is called a melting pot. Okay, so and then you go with the flow. Okay, like kind of things that Donald Trump is saying in terms of his own power base called MAGA, Make America Great Again. Okay, that is one. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm not attaching any value additions. All I'm saying is that is one strand of thought which is very dominant. Okay, in ethnic discourse all around the world, including in US, even in Africa also. On the contrast to that, there is another theory called a salad bowl theory. Salad bowl means what? A salad bowl, a bowl of salad in a particular plate. Okay, I go to a hotel, I go to a restaurant, ask to give me some salad. Okay, so he gives me a plate of salad. What do you get in a salad? You get some carrots, you get some cucumbers, you get some radish, you get some lettuce leaves. Okay, and then you pick and choose and you eat. Okay, so some people say, even though there is pressure for assimilation, there is pressure for acculturation, you merge your culture, you merge your identities, you merge into one single whole. Okay? You try to whitewash the American society, Canadian society, African society. Still, at the end of the day, you have got what you have, as Milton Gordon says, a cultural pluralism. Okay, a cultural multiculturalism. Okay, because just like apples are different than oranges, carrot is different than cucumber is different than radish is different than lettuce. Okay, so you cannot put all the things. Okay, all shoes size does not fit, um, all feet does not fit one particular size of the shoes. Okay, so you have to have different multiple things. So for example, if you go to a place like New York City, you go to Chicago, you go to even Nairobi, or you go to Kampala in Uganda, okay, you go to Cairo, you find people, little India, little Pakistan, little Indonesia, little Greece, little Italy, little China. That means there are people from different identities. They have come there and then trying to maintain their own ethnic heritage. They are very happy about it. They are very proud about their heritage. They are very much proud of their traditions. They want to retain it. They want to maintain cultural pluralism. At the same time, they would like to take advantage of the advantages that the institutional infrastructural facilities that the society provides, the mainstream society provides. Okay, so I think that's a very, very important contradiction, things that you need to remember, even in the African context. So there has been a lot of interstate migrations, lot of intra-state migrations from one part to the other one. So you need to adapt and co-opt. But there has been a class, just like the class of civilization, class of cultural values, cultural identities, subcultural identities. So I think that is very well. Same thing has happened with tribal solidarities also. Within the tribes also, there is a lot of heterogeneous elements. So now how are you trying to form a symmetrical dimensions? Okay, and how you can find certain commonalities and certain complementarities. So I think that's very, very important. And also the migration, mostly from the rural areas to the urban areas, for greener pastures, for getting better jobs, for getting better salaries, for sending children to the good schools, etc., etc. Okay, so I think that's very important. Uh, in in the next chapters, I think in violence and manifestations, I think the direct violence. We talk about how you define violence, particularly in an African context, particularly in terms of the ethnic divides, in terms of the tribal divides, in terms of the heterogeneity of African culture in different parts in Eastern Africa, Western Africa, Northern Africa, Southern Africa, Central Africa. Okay, and in the book, I think those of you who have, okay, the direct violence, I think in page 133, it is clearly written, the homicide, the genocide and massacre and murders, okay, how deliberate injury to the physical and psychological integrity of a human being, the brutal acts, torture, rape and maltreatment, restrictions or physical constraints, forced removal of population, kidnapping, taking of hostages, imprisonment and forced labor. I think many regimes, unfortunately, they do resort to that. And I think that also create a lot of social cleavages, lot of counter attack or counter backlash about those particular things. Okay, uh, because the regime, once it is in power, they're trying to perpetuate their rules. Okay, whether it's a military governments, whether it is a semi-democratic entities, etc., etc. Okay, uh, and also this is there are also examples of structural violence, lack of protections, violence by omission, lack of protection against social violence like hunger, disease, and poverty, lack of protection against accidents, lack of protection against uh, natural violence, hurricane and earthquake. I mean, you feel so helpless about it. Like when the tsunami took place, I mean, it happened somewhere near Sumatra of the islands of Indonesia. But people in Indian Ocean, in India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, everybody suffered. Thousands of people died. This was way back in 2004 in December. Okay, and in Africa also, they are also victims of lot of hurricanes, lot of natural disasters, etc., etc. Mediated violence, dangerous modification, and natural and social environment. Repressive violence, deprivation of fundamental rights. Okay, so they repress you. Okay, that is also a form of violence. Okay, and you are being relegated to a subjugated status. Okay, you don't like it, you don't feel comfortable about it, but there is not a lot that you can do because nothing is done in a much more organized manner. Okay, just one single voice or 5 or 10 voices cannot go too far. Okay, repressive violence, social rights, denial of trade unionism, denial of social equality, denial of participation in social economic life, denial of protection for material, individual, and collective properties. Okay, so basically creating a lot of state-sponsored restrictions. Okay, on some of the basic things that we take for granted. Okay, um, civil rights, denial of protection from the states. Okay, civil rights. Okay, even I mean, in a democracy, for example, let us say during emergency that India had way back in 1975, okay, there was censorship of the press, a number of people, political leaders were arrested. Of course, later on, after 2 years, the emergency was lifted, and there was an election in which then Prime Minister Mrs. Gandhi, she lost the elections. Okay, the thing is, I mean, either you go the whole way or you don't do it. Okay, it cannot be done in a half-hearted way. Okay, and once you deny the democratic participation, then you have got a lot of the uh, homegrown terror resistance movements, they come along. Okay, and that creates a bigger problem. Okay, one of the reasons why the Naxalite movement was so powerful in the 1970s was they were being depressed and oppressed for a long time. They were the underdogs. I mean, how long a person, a tribal group, or a group of people in a particular part where they feel that they have been marginalized, they have been peripheralized, they have been stigmatized for a long time, the only recourse they have is to resort to some violence kind of thing. So that creates a bigger problem for the state. Okay, that happens in many different parts of Africa, in many different societies, many different ways. Okay, so civil rights denial of protection from the state, political rights denial of democratic participation in political lives, creating all kinds of obstacles. um, Alienating violence, alienating living conditions at home, at work, at school, social ostracism, hostility against certain members, groups, society, women, children, and ethnocide. Ethnocide, I think in simple terms, I will say this is like ethnic cleansing, like that happened in Serbia, that happened in many different places in former Yugoslavia, uh, in 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 African places. Ethnic cleansing means one particular group of ethnic groups or one particular tribal groups, they are being eliminated one way or the other through genocide or through cleaning or through creating, unleashing a reign of terror or violent streaks so that they leave that particular place. Okay, so that is called ethnic cleansing. Okay, that changed the entire demography of that particular area, and that has got huge ramifications uh, in the societies. Okay, social ostracization, hostilities, ethnic cleansing, as I said, deliberate and systematic destruction of the culture of an ethnic group. An ethnocide is being carried on against the indigenous people by the destruction of their way of life. Okay. Again, in this context, again, put it things in a very comparative perspectives. When again I was in US as a student, I did teach a course in a college, in a university in America. This was on Native American Indians. You know, the Native American Indians, Red Indians, you can say, they used to be the original settlers in the United States, okay, during those 13 colonies. I'm talking about pre-independence, pre-1776, okay? And when the white settlers, the Europeans, they came to America, okay, in terms of grabbing their lands, etc., okay, it destroyed their own indigenous way of lives. Okay, and they took advantage of the resources, they took advantage of all the benefits That the indigenous, the Red Indian groups, and they are literally pushed to the mountains in Florida, in Nebraska, in many other places. Today, it will be difficult. I mean, if you want to go to United States and you want to look for or search for Red Indians or Native American Indians, you need to ask somebody. I mean, you don't get anybody, but they used to be there, literally everywhere, in every state. Cherokee Indians, Choctaw Indians, Seneca Indians. Okay, I read a lot of those books and articles about it. So sometimes I used to invite their leader to come. Okay, so they are the original settlers of America. But today they are living, they have lost their heritage, their traditions, they are not getting proper education, they have their own cultures kind of thing. So I think this mismatch, I mean, it is okay to be going through a process of transformation and modernization. That is also happening, unfortunately, in Africa also. You cannot just suddenly implant or transplant a an alien culture on a particular indigenous culture and expect that they talk alike, they behave alike, they they do the things just the way you do. Maybe they do things very differently. Even in India also, you go to, for example, a tribal population in Bastar, in Madhya Pradesh or Chhattisgarh. Okay, they're different. You go to some tribal areas in Jharkhand, they're different. Okay, or in Odisha, or in Bihar, or you go to Northeast. Even Northeast itself is very heterogeneous. Manipur is different than Mizoram. Mizoram is different than Meghalaya. I have been to Meghalaya, I've been to Assam, I've been to Arunachal. They're very, very different in many different ways. Okay, their styles, their rituals, their customs, and everything. So it is very important that you should encourage and enable them to maintain their cultural distinctiveness, their cultural identities, at the same time help them in whatever possible ways so that they move up in the socio-economic ladder, in the educational ladders. Okay, so I think same logic applies to the countries in Africa, okay, in general, and also individual countries in Africa in particular. So in this context, the United Nations, the UNESCO, and other specialized agencies, UNICEF, etc., they can do a lot. Okay, they have the money. They need to do that. Okay, it will be a real tragedy if Donald Trump, being American president with lots of money, he decides not to give any money, because I just read the newspaper the other day. He has tried not to provide any financial aid to USAID. AID is like associate in to provide economic aid to the developing countries. Okay, so because they need money. Okay, so that people can get more enlightened, they can think of some programs. Okay, so I think other countries, they should also chip in, other organizations, NGOs, the civil society. So if everybody chips in little, okay, they put everything to the pot. Okay, Africa will be much more different. I'm not saying everything will be solved, everything is going to be hunky-dory, everything is going to be fine, but it will be much better than what we see today. So, and that should be a three-pronged program: a short term, intermediate term, and a long term. So at least let us begin with a short term, then see some forward movement, and then we can go from there. Okay, let us go step by step. Let us cross one bridge at a time. So I'm very hopeful and I'm very optimistic Africa will see that day, so that at least at the minimum we can have a reduced violence, whatever kinds of violence, we can have at least more enlightenment, and we can have much more knowledgeable kind of things, so that Africa can feel proud of it, and African citizen can walk, an African educated person, we can have much more higher percentage, and it can be competing with any civilized countries in the world, and without any apologies to anyone. Okay, so thank you very much. I think the time is almost up. Okay, so thank you very much. Any quick question, any comments? Ansika, Vinod, or anybody else? Any quick questions, any comments?
No, sir.
Thank you, thank you. So anybody, how many students are here today? Only two of you, or?
We are only two.
Okay, great. So thank you very much again. So I'm really delighted. I'm so appreciative that you are here. I really feel happy that you come to my class. Okay, because knowledge is something we learn bit by bit, step by step. Okay, it is not that one fine morning I get up or you get up and all the knowledge that comes to your head. Okay, It is something that we all learn and we grow. It is a lifelong process, and I'm glad we are having a very open communication, open um, uh, channel of expressing our ideas, our opinions, okay? And this is all part of social science. There is nothing called the right one or the wrong one. Whatever opinions, whatever suggestions, whatever critique you make, everything goes into that big pot, as I said, okay? And it is a plus, okay? We always feel much more knowledgeable, much more enlightened. So again, thank you very much, okay? So see you next Sunday, okay? Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.